Is Jeb Bush coming off the sidelines in the Chris Rubio Senate race? The heat is rising in the McCollum-Sink governor's race. And who's the fallout hurt the most in the credit card charges of Marco Rubio? All of that on Power Play this week with our guests, Paul Fleming of Gannett News Service and Josh Haffenbrack of South Florida Sun Sentinel. All right, guys, the smoke is starting to rise. The heat's rising up across the political scene, even as we get ready for legislative session. And is Jeb Bush now intimating he's going to endorse Marco Rubio over Charlie Crist?
He stuck a toe in this week with comments that were recorded and broadcast that Governor Crist's support of the stimulus dollars was unforgivable and that he was the only statewide Republican that did so. I think there's two takes on this. One is, yes, he certainly is, his family members have already come out in support of Marco Rubio in that Senate race, and with these comments today indicates further that he will do so. And then there's the larger political debate. It's kind of tough to take that seriously when his own brother
started the stimulus.
Right.
And for gosh sakes, if Governor Bush were in office now, Democrat or Republican in the White House, and that money's flowing to a state in tough economic times, how does Governor Bush say no as governor?
Well, and you see a lot of the Republican governors across the country who sort of saber rattled a little bit ended up taking the money because it was just impossible to put together a budget without it. So, but I think the question he's raising is the governor's endorsement of the idea when it was still being debated in Congress.
But I think the governor has explained that, you know, he didn't like the policy, but if the money's going to flow, Florida better darn well get its fair share.
Oh, but it's the symbolism, as Josh indicates. I mean, you go back to the hug and also politicking in favor of the stimulus, but there's a practicality of it too. We'd still be here in special session trying to figure out the budget without that money.
Does a Jeb Bush endorsement really ring true through the Republican ranks and help Marco much more than his surge already is?
Well, you're talking about a closed Republican primary, and these are people who love Jeb Bush, and you saw in the special election in Jacksonville, Jeb Bush really helped John Thrasher in a really brutal Republican primary there. So I think he still does have a lot of currency with the Republican voters.
Okay, round two. We're about to start March, but the march is already on with TV spots waging in the governor's race, McCollum versus Sink and Sink versus McCollum. The charges are flying. Does it matter to voters at this point?
Well, and I think you're going to see this is the prelude to an incredibly nasty gubernatorial campaign, and you're already seeing the outlines where the Sink campaign is going to hammer McCollum for being a career politician. And the McCollum campaign is going to try to paint Sink as this
banker,
big fat cat banker, and I think it's going to be brutal and it's going to be close.
And are either of these sets of allegations really true, or does it really matter in politics?
Oh, I think there is some truth to describing the candidates that way. I think there's a lot of shading there in what they intimate as well, and it's not in both cases not entirely fair. But it does indicate, as Josh said, that it's going to be a nasty campaign looking at who these folks are. And when are we going to get to talking about how you would govern and what's going forward? I don't know that we'll get there. It's going to be a tough one.
But voters aren't really tuning into any of these races or any of the issues that are going to be in the ballot in November until the fall.
That's right. But this is an early chance for them to try to frame their opponent, and
frame them may be right if they're misstating the facts, though, isn't it? Let's go on to the Republican Party of Florida's continuing corruption scandal about credit card usage and the leaking this past week of Marco Rubio's credit card charges. What's worse, the credit card charges or whomever leaked them? Where's the fallout going to go?
Well, I think ultimately the fallout's going to come on Republicans because, in general, because no one's going to come out looking good in this. The control of the party at the time was Governor Crist handpicked Chairman Jim Greer, who's now gone. Marco Rubio held one of these cards and was part of the party spending. And the real question, I think, is going to be, was that appropriate party spending? That's going to be where you get into some legal questions rather than just political questions about what you spent on and any personal reimbursements you might have had.
But the Rubio people trying to make an issue about who leaked it, which is the worst offense, according to them.
They've taken a proactive approach to try to spin the story their way, but it's still, I mean, you know, it got play in national outlets that he'd spent money on, you know, the wine store near his house and this sort of thing. So it's not been a great cycle for
So it's going to kind of matter when he wrote the checks to pay back the party for personal expense. Have you guys found that out yet, though?
Well, but you say that's not clear yet. But you talk about getting out in front of this story for candidate Rubio. what my point was is the Republicans, this is going to continue to go on. There are 4 more cards out there with the expenses. Get it out of the way. They're going to have to come out.
And are the Democrats doing a good enough job of taking advantage of this Republican bad news in the party circle?
They're hammering them. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had a conference call with reporters yesterday. I think they're trying to make as much hay out of it as they can.
Okay, we're quickly going to go to your respective power play of the week. Josh.
I'm going to go with House Speaker Larry Creedle. He's come out in pre-session interviews with reporters saying the state's going to have a robust $1 billion reserve account, which runs counter to the governor's budget proposal and could scuttle a lot of the spending plans that the governor has proposed in his budget. And I think Speaker Creedle is an interesting guy to watch this session because he's one of the few people with power in Tallahassee who's not running for another office.
Okay, Josh. Paul?
I'm going to take us back to the beginning and name Karl Rove as the power play of the week. He was former Governor Jeb Bush's first follow on Twitter when the governor has started up his new tag there.
Okay, Paul Fleming, Josh Haffenbrack, thank you very much. Good luck for a tough slugfest legislative session coming up. Go to the Safety Review for all your latest political news, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.